I always try. I don't want to say I always succeed, but I always try to push as hard as I can for every single place and uh, every single place that I can get and the fastest time that I can get all the way to the finish line, no matter what's happening. If I get a flat tire, I try to fix it as fast as possible and then get back on and push all the way to the finish. If I cramp, I try to alleviate that if I can and then push all the way to the finish. If I'm bonking, I try to, whatever the problem is, fix it and then start riding as hard as you can to the finish. Don't ever give up.
This is Andrew Vontz, and you're listening to Choose the Hard Way, the show about how hard things build stronger humans who have more fun. Never quit. Always finish the race you start. That's what we're here to talk about today with pro cyclist Dylan Johnson, a past guest. He is back. Why? Well, because he walked for 2 hours in road bike shoes to finish his last race of the season at the Big Sugar Classic after a series of truly catastrophic mechanicals. Stories like this are exactly why I started Choose the Hard Way, and I'm counting on you to help more people hear them. My goal is to double the Choose the Hard Way community in the next 3 months, and I'm asking you to please help me make it happen. How can you do that? Please share this episode with a friend. Take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And in your podcast app or on YouTube, please like the show and rate it 5 stars. It really helps. You hear people say it all the time. The fact is, it helps it surface higher in search and more people will find it. Whether you've been listening since 2018 or you're new here, the number one thing you can do to financially support this project is to become a paid subscriber to my Substack. It takes time and money to bring you this podcast, and we're picking up the pace with more interviews in the balance of 2025, some really big plans in 2026. Please help me make it happen. You can find my Substack at alwaysthehardway.substack.com. You can just search for Choose the Hard Way in the Substack app if you were a Substacker already, or you can find the link in my bio at HardwayPod on Instagram. Listen, the media landscape has changed, and long-form podcasts are now a mission-critical channel for anyone who wants to connect with their target audience and build influence. That's why I started my consultancy, One Real Voice, to coach senior leaders to be great podcast guests or hosts or both. If you have a podcast or you're starting one or you're a high-profile individual who's trying to figure out what to do with all that inbound you have, that high demand to have you as a podcast guest, I also provide strategic guidance to help you create a roadmap that works today and over time for your podcast strategy. Set yourself up to win from the beginning and keep on winning with every appearance and every episode. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod or email hello@onerealvoice.com. You guessed it. Those links are in the show notes. Crypto curious? With over $1 trillion in transactions to date, blockchain.com is your trusted partner on your crypto journey. Go to blockchain.com to get started today. No experience required. And I'd also like to thank my bike sponsor, Lauf. Lauf is the Apple of bike design. They make exquisite, elegant products that just work better than anything else, like my Lauf Segla, that if you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me. I love this bike. One of the most fun, effective bikes I've ever ridden. Check them out at laufcycles.com. And now let's talk to Dylan. What was on the line for you going into this race, and where was your head at?
The least was on the line for me that there's ever been. I was battling not to get last place in the Grand Prix this year. And, for those that don't follow me, the reason for that is back in May, I got hit by a truck on a training ride and ended up fracturing my tibial plateau, couldn't do Unbound, which was pretty devastating for me because Unbound is like the race that I dream about. It's what I what I trained the most for. I put in a massive block before that race, 100 hours of training in a 3-week period. And it was just on a recovery ride shortly after that block that I got hit. And, obviously had to take quite a bit of time off. And the recovery back from that I'm still recovering, has been an uphill battle. I'm still not back to the same fitness level that I was this time last year. And I don't know. There's all these stories about people getting injured and then coming back stronger and having amazing races. And I remember thinking after the accident, I was like, oh yeah, that'll be me. I usually am pretty exhausted by this point of the season. And I was like, I'm going to be so fresh, everybody else is going to be exhausted, but I'm going to be fresh. I'm going to have the best big sugar I've ever had. And it's just not really the reality of the situation. So that's been super frustrating to deal with, to be honest with you.
I think the last time I talked to you actually was maybe a week after that accident happened. I think we had you on Beyond the Peloton. And yeah, I remember asking you if it was a Ram 2500, and it wasn't. It was a Ford vehicle, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the details matter. Let's jump forward to Big Sugar. You have a different set of expectations. You're in the midst of the race. I've seen some of the post-race footage from Joe Gettle and Drew Dillman. Humans flying all over the place on gravel like pinballs, flying into ditches. Saw a lot of references to being ditched in different posts following the race. What happens to you?
Yeah, Big Sugar is always so chaotic. There's a million people get flat tires, and there's crashes, and you can barely see anything in front of you because usually it's dusty. It was raining this year, so the dust wasn't terrible, but it is absolute chaos. It's probably the most chaotic gravel race that we do as Life Time Grand Prix riders. I got about 16 miles in. I was still with the front group, but I was kind of dangling off the back of the front group, and we go through a creek bed, and I just completely smash a rock in the creek bed. Like, I knew as soon as I smashed the rock that there was going to be a problem. And sure enough, I had a flat tire, but beyond just having a flat tire, like the tire compressed so hard that the rim was cracked. So cracked rim and flat tire. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try to maybe plug this tire and see what I can do with it. And Alex Howes rolls up on me and he's like, hey man, take my wheel. And the irony of this is that I literally the week before on Bonk Bros, which is the podcast that I do with my friends weekly, we had talked about how somebody gave their wheel to Keegan, and I thought that was really lame because this person was basically giving up their race for a non-teammate, and they weren't having a bad race. They were just like, here, Keegan, have my wheel. I thought that was super lame. I still think it's lame. That being said, I may have had like a little bit of a change of heart out there because I had so many issues, but I'll get to that. Alex Howes rolls up on me. He's already dropped. Obviously Alex Howes is used to being in much better shape, but he hasn't been in great shape recently, and he's like on the cusp of retirement anyway. So he's like, here, man, take my wheel. We go to change the wheels and the rotors aren't the right size. I've got 140s, he's got 160s, so it's not going to fit. And then Joe Laverick comes up on me and he's got tubes. And he had like 3 tubes for some reason. I don't know why he's got so many tubes. But I think we went through all 3 of them. And the problem was because the rim was cracked, I think the carbon shards were just puncturing the tube every single time. So the tubes weren't going to work. And by this point, we'd been like dicking around with the wheel for, I don't know, 40 minutes or something, like a long time. And Joe Laverick and Alex Howes were with me that entire time for some reason. I don't know. They clearly didn't care that much about their own race. They were just out there to help people that day, which is cool. And eventually I just resorted to putting grass in my tire. And I do want to take a step back before I go too much further. Like, the reason why I'm going through all this hassle instead of just immediately pulling the plug, partially is because of my own mentality about racing. Like, I admire people who make it to the finish line of a gravel race as opposed to just pulling the plug when the race goes bad. I do have that mentality around racing. But secondly, I knew that I was sitting in 18th, and I don't have a drop race because I didn't do Unbound. So if I DNF, I still finish the series, but I get 0 points for this race. And I knew that enough people have dropped out already that even if I make it to the finish line in last place, I will get some points. And I don't want to drop to last place, which last place would have been 20th. And I was like, if I get some points, maybe I can salvage like 19th or something. So I was like, if I make it to the finish line, it's not for nothing. I will finish a little bit higher in the Grand Prix overall, hopefully.
And Dylan, I have to hit pause because my mom, who is probably the number one listener of this podcast, there are people other than my mom listen to this podcast, but my mom is going to say, Dylan was talking about a drop race. What's a drop race? Can you explain that for Bonnie?
Yeah. I hopefully we're not getting too in the weeds here so that people who don't follow gravel are completely lost at this point. But so the Life Time Grand Prix, which is the professional off-road racing series here in the U.S., has 6 races, and you get points for each race, but you can drop your worst race. So it's not the best out of 6 races; it's the best out of 5 races with 1 drop race. And because I was hit by the truck and I wasn't able to do Unbound, I had already used up my drop race there. So I couldn't afford to have another bad race, so to speak. Like, I had to make it to the finish line.
And when you're in the ditch with Alex Howes and Joe Laverick, 40 minutes in, what's going through your head? And also, just when this incident happens, other than the practical aspect of your wheels destroyed, your tires slashed, what are you thinking and how are you feeling as this is going down?
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, I was in a pretty bad mental state all week. And I mean, usually I'm not really a person that's typically prone to depression, but I'd been very depressed for the last 3 or so weeks, just because, and I don't want to, there's people that deal with real depression. I think what I was feeling was just sadness for my loss of a season. Like, I kind of feel like this season was taken from me, if that makes sense. And my form still wasn't good. Immediately after the accident, I mean, obviously I was sad that I got hit and I was missing Unbound, but I was so hopeful for the second half of the season. And like I said, I thought I would be flying by Big Sugar. I thought everything would be fine. And I think once Schwamigan happened and I was clearly not back in shape by Schwamigan, every single week that passed and I wasn't back in shape, I got more and more down on myself. I was getting really hard on myself, which I know so many people, when I tell them this, they're like, Dylan, you broke your leg. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, these things take time. But I was getting more hard on myself with every week that passed, and I wasn't back in shape. And then I went through my training just wasn't going well at all after Schwamigan. I think there might have been some fatigue issues. I don't know, but I'm still trying to sort that out. I'm getting a blood test tomorrow, and hopefully we sort that out in the off season. But and it may be related to the accident, and it may not even be related to the accident. I honestly don't know. But yeah. So I was, and then I did Little Sugar. It went fine, I guess. I mean, I got 27th, but my power and I think part of the reason why I even finished as well as I did is because I didn't have any flat tires, which a lot of people had flat tires. And Little Sugar, for people that don't know, is the mountain bike race that happens the week before Big Sugar, which is the race that we're currently talking about. And my power output for that day was not good, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not back in shape, and I was not in a good mental state about it, and I was like, this race isn't going to go well. And I think when I got that flat, I was just like, well, I mean, this race probably wasn't going to go amazing anyway. I was dangling on the back of the group as it was. At least now I'll have a story to tell when I get to the finish line, if I make it to the finish line. And like I said, you know, I kind of, a lot of road racers will not be able to relate to this because the mentality in road racing is when you get dropped, you pull out. And a lot of road racers bring that mentality over to gravel. And when the race is going bad in gravel, as it often does, they just pull out. But that is just not my mentality about racing at all. Like I've never DNF'd a gravel race. I have DNF'd mountain bike races, but it's probably been 10 years since I've DNF'd any race whatsoever, mountain bike, gravel, whatever. I just don't pull out of races because they're going badly. Like I try to do everything that I can to get to the finish line as quick as I possibly can, no matter how badly the race is going. And that's just my mentality about it. And this is probably the worst mechanical that I've ever had in a race. Like I've never had, I don't know, like a frame snap or something. Like as far as, you know, the amount of time this mechanical is costing me, it's probably the worst mechanical I've ever had. So yeah, I don't know. I was just like, well, now I've got an adventure in front of me, making it to this finish line.
So there you are, tire Jesus with the destroyed wheel. And for whatever reason, you're not capable in that moment to do a miracle of the rotors and make the 180s, 140s. You can't get rolling again. How messed up is the wheel at this point? You said there were shards of carbon fiber going into the tube. Yep. How many tubes did you go through, and when did you realize this isn't going real well?
Yeah, so we tried 3 different tubes. All of them failed. I mean, we probably should have stopped after the second one. And at that, the wheel had a crack in it, but it was still totally rideable if you could get air in the tire. I mean, it's definitely a rideable wheel to the finish line if you could get air in the tire. The problem is we couldn't find a way to do that. And there, you know, there were little, I think that what was puncturing the tube is that there were little strands of carbon just sticking out of the crack. So at that point, Alex Howes is still with me for some reason. I mean, I was telling him, I was like, dude, like you can just keep riding, man. But you know what was helpful is Alex Howes has like some strong hands, and he did help me get my tire back on when I put all the grass in. So I started putting grass in my tire, and then it was really hard to get the tire back on. Alex Howes helped with that. And I started rolling with the tire full of grass, and I was like, yeah, I think this is going to work actually. Like, I think I'll be able to make it to the aid station, which, by the way, the aid station is 12 miles from where I got the flat. So I get the flat, and it's 12 miles that I got to go to get to the aid station. And I start riding with the grass tire, and I was like, I think this is going to work. I think I'll make it to the aid station on this grass tire. And I don't know if anybody's ever tried to ride with grass in your tire, but the problem is like it all clumps up in one spot after a while. So there's just a big clump of grass on one section of the tire, and then the rest of the tire is just empty. That's just what ends up happening. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. So then I probably rode the grass tire for maybe 3 or 4 miles. And a lot of people were passing me. And it's funny because people were passing me and they were like, "Hey man, you got a flat." And I was like, "Yeah, I know I got Yeah, I know. I know." And a lot of people were stopping to help too. I mean, it wasn't just Alex and Joe. Like a lot of people were like, "Hey man, you need anything? You need like a tube? You need." I was like, "No, I already tried the tube. Thank you." Like I probably over the course of this race, well over 100 people, maybe 150 people asked me if I needed help, which is awesome. But
Whose idea was the grass?
that was my idea. Yeah.
Yeah, Flintstone level technology, right? You
Yeah.
decided to go for the grass. I'm curious with the kit that you're carrying on your bike in terms of backup tubes, CO2s, plugs. Do you carry tape with you? And do you think it would have been possible to tape down the protruding carbon fiber?
Yeah, I don't carry tape with me. But if I had had like a roll of either duct tape or electrical tape, that might have been possible. Yeah.
Okay. I started in 2013 after I did the race then known as Dirty Kansas half pint for the first time. I started always wrapping electrical, a couple, I don't know, like 2 to 3 feet of electrical tape or duct tape around my pump or a tire lever so that I'd always, didn't know why I might need it, but I thought it would be a good idea. And then I would always carry a dollar bill for a boot and then part of a milk carton that was curved because I felt like that could have been a good fail safe if I had to tape that inside of the tire. But
Yeah.
maybe next time. Now we know grass doesn't work very well. At that point, like you said, you just want to get to the finish line. Were you feeling any stress at all? Or were you just thinking, I just need to get to the line?
Well, so at that point where, we're well over 2 hours into the race and the race only takes 2 and a bit hours. Like Matt Beers won in 2 hours and 13 minutes. So I know like I'm so far out of the race at this point that it just, I just want to make it to the finish line. Yeah. And I'm not even really concerned about making it to the finish line fast at this point because I'm in last place. And no matter what happens, even if I get a brand new wheel right now, I'm not catching anyone because they are so far down the road at this point. There's still plenty of amateurs passing me, but as far as the pro race goes, I'm deep into last place, like with no hopes. Yeah, so the grass fails, and then I was like, okay, well, the rim is already cracked, so the rim has already got to go. So I think I'll just ride this rim with no tire and see what happens. So I stop, I take the tire off, put the tire around my shoulders, around my back, put the rim back on with no tire, and then I try to ride the rim with no tire, which is obviously incredibly bumpy and uncomfortable and loud. But I was like, okay, I think this will actually work. And that probably lasted for a mile before the rim just disintegrated on a downhill. And then it was a tacoed rim. Probably just slammed a rock too hard, and the whole rim just was unrideable at that point. So then I think I had 6 miles to walk to the aid station, and I used road shoes and pedals for the race, so I had to do that walk in road shoes. You texted me and you said, did you think about doing it barefoot? I mean, we were walking on gravel, so gravel's not the most comfortable thing to walk on barefoot. So I didn't really think about taking my shoes off, to be honest with you. And yeah, it was a slow walk in road shoes for probably an hour and 50 minutes, almost 2 hours of walking total. And in that time there were Jeeps that passed me, and there was a SAG vehicle, and they were like, you're the guy that we need to pick up who's got the broken wheel. And I was like, I do have a broken wheel, but you don't need to pick me up. You can just keep going. Um, yeah, I mean, I turned down like five different rides to pick me up, and yeah, again, a lot of people are passing me asking if I need help, and I was like, no, just keep going. And yeah, and then I finally make it to the aid station, and at this point, not only am I dead last in the pro race, but I'm probably pretty close to last in the entire race, like including the amateurs who had to start 30 minutes or an hour behind us. I don't know how far they started behind us, but pretty close to dead last out of everyone. And there's a few people at the aid station, and I was like, there was a Lifetime official there, and I wasn't positive on what the rules were about switching wheels. So I asked him, I said, if I switch wheels with somebody here at the aid station who's not in the pro race and I make it to the finish line, will that count as a finish? And he said, let me make a call and check. So he called and he said, yeah, you can't switch bikes because you have to finish on the same frame that you started. But if you can find a wheel from somebody here at the aid station and you make it to the finish, that will count as a finish. And I was like, is there a cutoff time? And he's like, no, we didn't make a cutoff time. So if you make it there by the time if you make it there before we pack up the finish line and the timing, then you're good. And I was like, okay. And then I was asking people if I was asking some of the aid station staff if they brought a bike, because I don't want to ruin somebody's race because I have a flat tire. I'm asking the aid station staff if they have a bike. No one brought a bike. Then I started asking riders if anyone wanted to loan me a wheel. And finally, this guy Brennan Lawrence, I want to give him a shout out. He said, "Yeah, take my wheel, man. Like I've already crashed. This will be a good excuse for me to pull out here. Just take my wheel," which is super cool of him. And he also he had he had the right cassette, but he also had 160 rotors, so we had to get the Shimano neutral service to switch the rotors, and the wheel worked. And my cracked rim, one of the kids at the aid station was like, can I have your rim? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, take it. And then he was like, do you want the cassette? And I was like, no, just keep the cassette. And he's like, can you sign it for me? I signed the wheel. And so that kid was super stoked on his new busted wheel. And yeah, and so then I hopped on the bike with the new wheel, which and then I rode to the finish after that, and the weather got way worse once I started riding. It was like torrential downpours and a lot of wind, but there were still people out there. I made it to the finish line in nearly 6 hours to do 50 miles, and that's nearly 4 hours down on the winter. But yeah, and me making it to the finish line that day meant that I salvaged 19th place instead of dropping to 20th by 1 point. So if I had quit there, I would have gotten 20th in the Grand Prix versus 19th, which there are a lot of pros who would be like, who gives a shit about that, dude? Like, you were dead last. But I don't know. It means something to me, especially after the season I've had.
Who did you beat?
Finn Gullickson.
Yeah. Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, I was proud of it. And then I wanted to Brennan, who gave me the wheel, was like such a nice guy. I took him a brand new Duke wheel, which Duke is my wheel sponsor. I took him a brand new wheel and I gave it to him, and I said, you keep that. and I of course I gave him back his old wheel too. I gave him his old wheel and I gave him a brand new wheel, and I was like, dude, you saved my race. Yeah.
When you were in the midst of the long walk, what was your attitude like? Did this strike you as funny at all as it was happening, or were you seeing your gravel life flash past your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain point in a bike race where it's going so horribly wrong that it ceases to be frustrating and it's just comical, you know? Like I'm sure whether it's a race or a ride, like I'm sure we've all been there where there's just been so many it's there's been so many things that have gone wrong that it's just laughable at this point, like me putting grass in the tire and then my rim exploding when I tried to ride without a tire and then me just walking. Like I think by the time I was actually on foot walking, like I was just like, I can you believe that this is how this season is going to end? I mean, I was kind of I was thinking to myself like this is actually pretty fitting that this is how this season would end, with me just walking my bike for 2 hours straight. Like it's been probably the worst season I've ever had. Just in terms of setbacks, and then like my race results since and I was like, yeah, it's fitting that this season would end this way.
Who was at the finish line?
My girlfriend Peta was at the was at the finish line filming, which was super sweet of her because she'd finished the race like 3.5 hours earlier, and it was pouring rain. And there were not a lot of other people at the finish line because obviously most people had finished and it was raining. So, yeah.
Yeah, video from the finish, it looked completely barren. I don't think I saw anybody on the road
Hmm.
besides you.
Yeah, no, people had cleared out. Yeah.
Now that you've had a little bit of space from this incredible life experience, which I think is probably the best story anyone took away from Big Sugar, save Cam Jones, probably. I think you
Hmm.
got this the first or second best story coming out of Big Sugar. You're back home. What do you take away from this experience that you'll carry forward, other than don't put grass in your wheel and maybe bring some tape?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some like I mean, bringing tape is a good one, and yeah, don't put grass in your wheel. But as far as like, I already had this mentality. There was when I was a teenager, because I started racing bikes when I was 14. I think from the time that I was 14 to maybe 18 years old, there was definitely a period where if a race wasn't going my way, and that doesn't even mean I get a flat tire, I just mean like, I get dropped or I'm not as far up as I think I should be. Like if a race wasn't going my way, I would get very frustrated and I would give up mentally. I'd either give up the race completely and I'd DNF, or I'd give up mentally and I'd kind of not push as hard as I could to the finish line. And um, I think around the time that I was 18, 19, I had a big shift in my mentality. And it wasn't even necessarily like a mentor that told me this. I don't know where this came from, but it really, it's not like somebody told me about this mentality and then I adopted it. I kind of adopted it myself, of no matter what is happening in a bike race, no matter if it's going your way or not going your way, or you have a mechanical, or you get dropped, or you cramp, or you bonk, or whatever long list of things that could go wrong in a bike race, I I always try. I don't want to say I always succeed, but I always try to push as hard as I can for every single place, and uh every single place that I can get, and the fastest time that I can get, all the way to the finish line, no matter what's happening. If I get a flat tire, I try to fix it as fast as possible and then get back on and push all the way to the finish. If I cramp, I try to alleviate that if I can and then push all the way to the finish. If I'm bonking, I try to, whatever the problem is, fix it and then start riding as hard as you can to the finish. Don't ever give up. And when I say give up, I don't just mean DNF the race. I mean also give up mentally. Um, and I think that mentality has helped me a lot in gravel racing, because there's a lot of times in gravel races where things don't go your way. Just one example that I want to throw out there is Unbound 2022. No, 2020. What was the mud year? Was that 23 or 22?
I think it was 23.
Yeah. Unbound 2023, I had a horrendous time in the mud. By the time I got out of the mud section, I was in 85th place because there was a timing mat after the mud section, so you could see what place you're in. I was in 85th place. I was really far down and lost a ton of time. And I basically, for the most part, rode solo with help here and there from people that I caught. I rode solo back into the top 20 by the end of the race. I mean, I had 185 miles to do it, but over the course of 185 miles, I rode back to the top 20. And that's because I didn't give up in the race. I put my head down after the mud section and I rode as hard as I could to the finish line. And there were so many riders that I passed between 85th and top 20 that should probably be fitter than me and should probably finish higher than me and are probably better bike riders than me that just gave up on the day. Either they actually gave up and got a DNF or they mentally gave up and they said, we're just going to phone it in here.
It's interesting. Whatever level of athletic competition you might participate in, one thing that you know is going to happen when you show up the day of a race, and whether it's an ultra marathon, a 10K, a gravel race, whether it's a 50-mile Big Sugar or the Big Sugar, the actual distance, you know that it's going to hurt. And at some point, your body is going to tell your mind, stop doing this. And I think that's a really interesting point that you're making, which is whatever you're feeling, continue to push as hard as you can, because you don't know what's going to happen up the road in front of you. Number one, anything can happen at any time. You don't know what's going to happen to the people who are up the road, whether they'll have mechanical or they're going to need to Flintstone and shove some grass in their tire. And in addition to that, other than having an actual physical injury and being incapable of continuing to move forward, the point of being there is to do something challenging, and it's going to serve you well the next time that you're out there. And once you open the door and give yourself permission to quit, then it's a lot easier to open that door every subsequent repetition in the future, it seems.
I agree. I completely agree. I think that this is you know, my girlfriend Peta, who was at the finish line, she's got more of a roadie mentality than I do. She's like, I would have completely pulled out if I were you. And I think most people would have pulled out. And what I said is I would never, ever think less of somebody for pulling out in my situation. Like, it was a really tough situation to be in. I would never think less of somebody for pulling the plug in that situation. That being said, I would think more of somebody for making it to the finish line. That's kind of something that makes gravel special and differentiates gravel from road. Like, road racers, you don't even have to have a flat tire. You just got dropped from the peloton and they're like, get in the car. You know what I mean? As a gravel racer, you almost have a little bit of a responsibility sometimes to say no. Like, just because this race isn't going well does not mean I'm going to pull the plug here. I'm going to make it to the finish line.
Thanks for listening. Please help me double the Choose the Hard Way community in the next 3 months. It's an audacious goal. I know we can make it happen, and I need your help. How can you help? Please share this episode with a friend, or heck, 3 friends. Subscribe wherever you listen or watch, and take a moment to hit 5 stars. I share my reflections on every episode of Choose the Hard Way on my Substack. That's where my newsletter is located. And the number one thing you can do to help me bring you more of these conversations is to become a paid subscriber to the Substack. You can find it at alwaysthehardway.substack.com. And you can always find that link in the show notes and in my bio at HardwayPod on Instagram. And if you're already a Substacker, just search for Choose the Hard Way and you'll find me. The media landscape has changed. Scripted is out, real is in. Being a great podcast guest or host isn't optional, and it's also something that doesn't come naturally to people. It's now a mission critical skill for senior leaders. That's why I started my consultancy, One Real Voice, to help you thrive on podcast panels and high stakes, open-ended conversations where reputations are built and business is now won. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod on Instagram or reach out to hello@onerealvoice.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.